So I've epoxied this piece with the fast drying epoxy, and it's all together. Doesn't fall apart. But I've got a gap here, and this little gap here, I've kind of let some of the glaze squeeze out. Again, not a very noticeable gap, but it gives me an opportunity to show you this other epoxy. So I had a piece that I just recorded a video on, and the video stopped recording. So I'll show you the end result, and then I'll show you how to do it. So here is a piece that had a gap here, and I've filled it in with epoxy. I've used PC 11, which is a slow drying 2-part epoxy. Looks like this when you buy it. This part, ooh, I mixed together, and I just broke the piece I was gonna fix. So you can use this as an epoxy to attach things. You can also use this as a fill. And I am now going to do both because I have a little bit here that broke when it was firing and it has a bit of a gap. And then I have a piece that broke just now when I hit it. For some reason, it broke underneath where it must have had a stress in it before this piece fell during firing. So I'm gonna use this in both ways. So first thing you wanna do, and I've already done it, so I guess I'm gonna just do it again. I've got it on a little piece of cardstock so that I can mix it. You can use a lid, like a lid from a yogurt or something is great to use for this. I'm gonna take even amounts of both epoxy. So I'm gonna use different popsicle sticks. I'm gonna scoop a bit of this one and put it onto here, and then I'm gonna scoop an equal amount of the other one. I already used this stick for this one, so that's why it's already out. So I'm gonna take equal amounts and I'm gonna put them on here, and then I'm gonna use one of the sticks, or in this case I'm gonna use the stick I already have ready, to mix those guys together. Oops, what am I forgetting? Last time I had gloves on. It's a good idea to wear gloves when you're doing this so that your stuff doesn't stick, or so that the stuff doesn't stick to your hands. It's not good for you. It's also harder to get off. So you leave the, you use the epoxy, use the gloves so that your epoxy doesn't stick. I've had these gloves on and off a couple of times today. There we go. And then I think I put this one on backwards. Sorry, maybe I'll cut this if I know how to cut videos. So gloves are a good idea. Workspace is covered as well, so you can see that I've got this stuff on the table, this piece of cardstock on the table, or newspaper or something like that, just because this stuff is not, this will stick permanently, and you'll have this permanently on your table, and you probably don't want to do that at your home. All right. So I have mixed this together. I've mixed it so I don't see any streaks. I can't see the kind of, what is that, gray and white. It's all kind of an off-white color. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of this and I'm gonna press it into here, and I'm gonna do a nice thin layer. With this stuff, with the PC11, you have 24 hours of cure time. So this is not going to be ready to be touched and moved around for 24 hours. A long cure time means that you have a nice long work time. And now as I go to line these up, because I just broke it, it's got a nice clear, easy to see how it fits together. I also have a little bit of extra squeezing out the side there, and so I'm gonna just use my toothpick, a clean toothpick, to clean that up there. Now on this side, I've got some gaps. I have no idea if this is in focus, so if you can't see it, take my word for it. There's little gaps where bits of this broke off when it fell. There's probably some of it on the floor over there from when I just dropped it. And the nice thing about this epoxy is with the long work time, and because it's a bit thick, I can use it to fill in these gaps. Now on the top, that break I already filled, so that one should be able to handle me pushing on it. The other one is still soft, so I need to be pretty careful about it. But I'm essentially just using this toothpick to fill in this epoxy is like a paste. And so it allows me to, it doesn't just drip, right? It stays pretty thick. Now you can obviously see the errors now pretty clearly because they're all white. Later I'm gonna match the paint on these. on another day, tomorrow, after 24 hours have passed. I'm gonna match the paint with acrylic paint, just kind of whatever acrylic paints you wanna get. And then I'm gonna use a clear gloss to match over the top, once the paint has dried, to match the sheen of this original. This one fell and has a little yuck spot where it stuck to something else. And so I'll be able to match that too and essentially hide that little yuck. In fact, there's a little gap between the yuck and the rest of the glaze. So I'm gonna use some of this epoxy to fill this in. So this epoxy, whichever epoxy you're using, using the epoxy to make a fix, not a good idea for food, like dishes and things like that, because you don't really want to be eating off of acrylic paint and epoxy. But perfectly fine for sculpture, and if you take your time and you're super patient and you don't mind futzing with it a bit, you can actually get it to the point where you can't even tell. People wouldn't be able to see that there had been a break. In fact, in my sculpture that I make, I plan for there to be epoxy. Like I use epoxy to attach metal and plastic elements to my work. I know of another artist who fires her work, Beth Kavanagh. She does large-scale sculpture, and she fires her work in pieces, and then she uses this exact same epoxy to fill or to put the parts together and fill in any gaps. And I've stood in a gallery with her work. You absolutely cannot tell that that's what she does. But the important thing for you to remember is she doesn't do this in a 5-minute video, right? She spends significant amount of time, just like I'm gonna spend, fussing with this. All right, so I've got these spots filled, but they're a little bumpy. One of the things I like to do once I've filled is I like to use a little bit of paper. And so I've just ripped a bit of this paper, and I'm gonna use this essentially like a rib, a throwaway rib. Don't use your ribs on this because it'll stick to your rib. But I'm gonna use this like a rib to essentially smooth over the surface. So I'm gonna drag my paper rib across this surface. It's gonna smear some of the epoxy, but remember, I'm gonna match the paint later anyway, so I'm okay with that. It's gonna get rid of any bumps. It's gonna smooth across the seam, so the seam is not later visible as a little bump. Now, I have done this in, what are we at, 7 minutes, including dropping things and not being able to put my gloves on. And so I'm gonna spend a little bit more time fussing with this off camera, but you see the basics of what I've done there. Couple of reminders. PC 11 is what I've used right here, 24-hour cure period, so I can fuss with this for a couple hours, actually. I could even go have lunch and then come back and fuss with it. 24 hours later, it will be set, it will be hard. You can sand it, but it's seriously gonna be hard. So I would do as much as you can to get it where you want it to be now before it sets. PC7 is the same thing. You can buy both of them in the tubes. This is a double-ended jar, essentially, or the 2 jars. You can get this stuff at the hardware store. PC7 is black, PC11 is white. Same stuff, 24 hours. This stuff you can use for repairs, but this has a much shorter time period, and it doesn't work to kind of fill the stuff in like that. All right.